But the people that get a taste of it and they start to tap into what their potential is and they start to believe that there's different things possible for themselves, then they can find an environment like this and be hungry to be able to just tap into it. Welcome back, everybody. Another episode of Just Real Quick. Today, I got J-Rod in the studio with me. And we got our boys, Andres and Joel, are out doing the work right now across the country, putting in the sales. And Andres, you get 2 sales today or just 1?
Just 1. I have 2 same days that I'm going to go close down.
All right. Well, we're looking for 2 more to show up then.
There you go.
So today we are going to cover some character traits, most common character traits that you need to be successful at sales, to be successful at JKR Windows. Me and Joel were just actually talking about some of these on our coaching call earlier today. So I'm excited to go over this one, Joel, because if anybody knows character traits and how to explain them, it's you. So thank you for putting together the material on this. Let's roll.
Well, flattery will get you everywhere, first off, and just let you know. I've had a chance to watch being a coordinator and learning about the bull, owl, lamb, tiger personality strategies has been really fun because I got to watch Obi close. I got to watch Blake close. I got to watch Andres close and all these different personalities. And then I got to watch myself handle them. And so when Jared asked me to put together some information, I had a wealth of experience to draw from. For everybody who doesn't know, the most basic introduction to what I'm talking about is that there was a guy that wrote a book, forget his name, Charles Clark III, Minds on Order, still waiting. It's a little bit hard to find some publishers. He's out of print, so you got to get it used. But not long ago, 2021, I believe, he wrote his book, and it was about how to use different personality analytics to sell. Now, everybody's heard of different kind of personality classification systems. You know, I'm a yellow person, I'm a blue person, etc. Well, this guy broke it down. He said, look, when you're talking to a prospect, they're going to fall into one of 4 classifiable character modes of function, if you will. And then he gave them each an animal.
Joel, tell me the name of that book again.
Called Bulls, Owls, Lambs, and Tigers, Personality Selling. It's by Charles J. Clark III, and it was published in 2021. And the central thesis is just that. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I said thank you. I don't think you had said it before, and I know you guys have talked about this a ton, but I've never knew where that came from, and now I know.
So Joel sent this training to me in an email, and I copy and pasted it into a Google Doc and just shared it with you. So it's got the name of the book and the whole deal.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
And that's basically what I'm going to go over. That's kind of going to be the skeleton of what I'll go over today. But you know how it is when somebody publishes a book and it releases a central thesis, and then there's a lot of commentary, and then there's secondary and tertiary. We didn't become aware of the bull, owl, lion, tiger strategies through the book. We found it online. And I remember when, I think for me, it was Obi first mentioned it. I don't know if he was the one who found it, but.
So we
where did that come from?
So we went to the sales summit for the door-to-door experts, Coach Bert's cabin there in
Nashville. Just outside of Nashville.
Murfreesboro, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, that's where I think we were initially introduced to the concept. Is it was a training that Sam Taggart had actually put on there.
Thank you, Sam.
Yep, thank you, Sam. Which is cool because it's kind of like a door-to-door specific sort of content and context that we use it for. So not just in the window world, they're utilizing this for alarms and solar and pests, etc.
You can see why it's a little bit esoteric, kind of hard to find. But yeah, how JKR, thanks J-Rod, I didn't know because the knowledge of the bull, owl, lion, tiger here at JKR predated me. So that's cool. I didn't know it was Sam. Basically, there are 4 personality types that the author introduces, I should say outlines. The bull is characterized, they're action-oriented, They're often intimidating to coordinators sometimes. They want to rush us. They're assertive. They can be demanding, and they're not going to get hung up on details. Some of the pitfalls of a bull is that they want to skip the details that will come back and bite them. And so you have to be very careful when you're working with the bull. You have to accommodate that bull. There's another thing about the personality types that works into it, and that is ego, because sometimes a person wants you to think that they're in control and they'll act like a bull, but they might actually really be more like an owl. So sometimes your ego kind of plays into it. And one way of handling bulls on the door that Kyle's a fountain of ideas. One way that he handles it is when a bull hurries him, he actually slows down his pitch because it keeps him in control. And now they're really paying attention. And that way, if they're faking bull and it's just smoke.
I found a lot of bulls that are actually tigers. They put on the bull front, but then they're just real tigers at heart.
Or sometimes an owl will act like a bull at the very beginning, but then all of a sudden they'll turn into a numbers guy.
Well, Harley. So when you look at bull, owl, lamb, and tiger, it's never just one. You can see people. They can have 2, even 3 different ones, right? Like you said, bull and tiger, they go a lot. Owl and lamb, type of deal. And most bulls, they are tigers, right? There's hardly anyone that's going to be a straight bull throughout the whole time, right? You can switch them over. So that's what they're going to find out. Most people are going to start as a bull, but they're going to finish as tiger.
But what's really interesting is what they truly are often. And this is theory. I haven't really tried it out, but often what they really are, they will project the opposite of it at the very beginning.
Putting up a front. Yeah.
Yes. And usually the front is kind of diametrically opposed to what they usually settle at. Now, I am a believer that in the end, whoever you're talking to, they are going to be one animal. They will settle on one animal. It's like objections. You can throw out as many fake objections, but really in the end, there's only one dominant one that'll come up. And you can find out as a coordinator, you can find out what that is by the one that keeps recurring. And as a director, we can usually find out what the main personality type is because it'll be the one they are in the close.
After you've gone through the whole process.
Oh yeah, sometimes they'll go through all 4 personality types. It's really fun to do.
But then you flush it out when it gets real serious in the close.
That is exactly right. And we can give you examples of that.
Okay, so we've got the bull. We got a pretty good explanation of the bull. Which one's next, Joel?
So an owl is a numbers guy. They're very analytic. Now, they're sometimes so prided, they're perfectionists to a point sometimes they don't want to even admit something they haven't considered or thought about or a mistake that they've made, right? And so sometimes they can be a little bit even pretentious about it. They're logical, methodical, calculating, analytical. They hate making mistakes. And sometimes they're not often expressive about every thought, idea, and value in their head. And so the pitfalls for them is that sometimes you'll be talking to them on one level, on a surface level, but they might be considering something that they're not expressing on a second level. And so being able to read an owl is really important. It means you got to use the accommodation is to use a lot of questions, because an owl is going to ask typically an owl is going to be the one asking you questions. The tricky thing there is you might lose control, right? By just fielding all their questions, when in reality, what you want to do is figure out to ask, where are these questions coming from? And so you need to be able to ask the questions that help you realize, what is it this guy is really thinking about, right? What is it that's really important? What is it really for us? What's the dominant buying motive, right? And what are the biggest obstacles I got to get to it?
Yeah, you not only have to flush out their true personality trait or character trait, but you got to flush out their motives and the main pain points, the things that are going to get them moving.
Yeah, we start general and we get more and more specific. And by the time you're in the close, you're going to pretty much know everything down to, their sock size.
Yeah, that's the ideal situation. And that's the difference between a professional and somebody who's right there present in the moment and gathering all the information, asking questions and listening, Joel, instead of just pounding down their throat a bunch of information. We're in the business of collecting information that we can use to help them make a decision that we know is right for them. but you got to ask the questions. Then you got to shut up long enough and listen to get the answers that you can use as a tool throughout the rest of the process, and keep plugging that. As you're getting measurements, as you're talking to the other spouse, you're just reinforcing these things and keep plugging them. And then you're using them again when you're in the close. And then when you're right down there in the nitty gritty, you've already been through the process and you keep bringing it up. And we've already uncovered that we know this makes sense for you. And here's the reasons why. So what other things do we need to uncover that are keeping you from making the decision right now?
Perfect use of isolation in that process. Cause really that's all we have to do is just kind of go through trial and error and separate one thing from another. And that is also, Jefferson, you touched on the perfect application of this. This isn't something we study so we can slick Willie sell somebody some snake oil. Say that 7 times.
I like that one.
Slick Willie sell some snake oil.
Slick Willie, hold on. Slick Willie sell some people some snake oil.
You guys been pretty good at that.
Gotta add a list.
There you go. Yeah, you gotta do it with condition. No, this is what we have to do to help people, because how many people understand and have made peace and confronted their own needs? Well, every day we knock doors with people that if they were going to be able to do that, they would have replaced their windows.
But there's a reason why we're sitting there in front of them.
Yes, we are just helpsmiths. And so it helps to understand how to peel the layers back of the onion to get to what we can really do to help them.
Exactly. Okay, so now we got bull, owl. Is there anything else you wanted to add on the owl?
I think what we'll do after we get a description of each, we'll go through and give some examples of how to, for one, identify them and how to handle them.
Love it.
Are we doing mostly coordinator or also director?
So this is coordinator specific.
Okay, so a lambs, they're soft-spoken. They're often reserved. Sometimes they're elderly, passive, right? Sometimes they'll defer to a spouse, sensitive. They're going to try and avoid confrontation. They might set an appointment with you to avoid confrontation. That's a pitfall of a lamb, because they're going to roll over for you and be a yes man or woman.
Yep.
And then you're going to get
Very
ghosted.
agreeable.
Yes, right. And so that's one of the pitfalls. But they might suppress negative concerns and complaints. Like if you're on the day of installation, these might be the people that are afraid to bring up a concern with an installation that then later they might have to call you. They're not going to bring things up in real time. Indecisive. Often they're slow paced, and they value emotional dividends. It's about how it feels. But they're deep. They're deep emotions. There's a lot of descriptors. Anyway, they're often broad spectrum thinkers, and they're very loyal and often easily influenced by influencers. So like sometimes grandma has a son-in-law.
Yep. Or a neighbor.
And you think it's grandma, you might have set the appointment with grandma, but son-in-law is going to be like, what'd you do that for, grandma? So that's kind of a lamb personality, some of the pitfalls. Now, how you handle a lamb, you got to be very reassuring. And again, probing is a general catch-all, because what you want to do is you want to ask the right questions to find out who's influencing a lamb.
Absolutely. You got to have all the decision makers there when you got a lamb involved.
Yep, exactly. If the lamb is the one that has the power of the purse, you got to make sure whoever it is that could kill the deal for that lamb is part of that appointment, so that we can address the concerns of the influencer at the same time. So for a coordinator,
and you make sure that person is involved and feels included, and that you're looking across the room at both of them, making them both feel like you're sharing everything with this person as well. Because ultimately you may know that this person runs the house. They're going to be able to make the final decision. But I don't know how many of these that I've watched during training, a new person completely miss an opportunity because they never even looked at this person over here. And they were the ones that end up making the decision.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. And I sometimes have to catch myself making sure that you have to make your eye contact and your sell to the right people.
And
That's
with
right. You got to keep them both engaged.
Coordinator wise, you got to be pretty tactful how you do it, just like it sounds, right? You're guiding a lamb, you can't scare it off, right? If you're a little bit too pushy, too aggressive, like he's going to turn it off. She's going to set a really bad appointment, or she's just not even going to say anything and close the door. Lambs are the type of people that are going to just open the door real, like, so little piece. You might be able to see him, hey, what do you want? You know, a little bit scared. Give him a nice smile. You slow it down a little bit, right? And that's one of the personalities that I would be like, well, what did your neighbor over here? What did, John and Susie and whoever else, and they got our windows, and you got to create a lot more trust with the lamb than you would with anybody else in that list, right? And like I said, don't push it too hard because you're going to set a pretty bad appointment. You do extra probing, and you do find that other decision maker. It doesn't matter who it is, because hardly ever a lamb's going to be living alone, and then she's going to be making all the decisions by herself.
Lamb needs a flock.
And another thing I was thinking about as we were bringing up lamb to begin with was we have a lot of appointments that either cancel on the spot or you get there and realize that it wasn't really qualified. And they were just very agreeable and they said yes because they really liked that person that was at their door. So one thing to get really familiar with is recognizing when you're in front of a lamb at the door, and it may have been like the easiest appointment you've ever set, but it doesn't mean it's time to walk away yet. Sometimes you got to reel it back in and requalify and ask some additional questions and make sure that you're talking about the opportunity again and the urgency and some of the things that are going to make this a solid appointment when your director gets there. But if you just walk away at that really pivotal time and it was just such an easy appointment, that's going to end up being something that was canceled on the spot, or you're going to get a dark house, or you get there and realize that they have a neighbor or a son that needs to be involved that you didn't flush out. So you got to make sure that you're asking those questions. And each one of these personality traits or character traits, you're going to have to do a slight different approach. And with a lamb, you better dang sure be asking the extra questions. Make sure you have all of the qualifications done and the right people in that appointment. Otherwise, you don't want to get a reputation for setting a bunch of appointments with lambs that end up being cancels or unqualified.
Yeah, I think you push a bull, you lead a lamb, you probably run with a tiger and feed an owl. It's probably
There you go.
I like that.
Yeah.
Well, hey, let's talk a little bit about the tiger, and then, like I mentioned, we'll get back in and unpack each one as we go. So, some basic qualifications of a tiger.
I mean, it's hard not to just unpack them while we're talking about them. I get so excited. You know what I mean?
But it's kind of an overview. Hey, this is what it is, and then we can get through and.
Okay, let's do it. What about a tiger, old Joel?
So tigers are like squirrel. They're very distractible, and they're
I must be a
excitable.
tiger.
Yeah,
I got ADD.
yeah. As it's the typical ADHD stereotype. They're spontaneous, optimistic. They're always looking forward. They're feel good oriented. They're going to be easygoing. They like new things. They like relationships.
They're buyers. Those are salespeople.
Yes.
They're your best friend.
Those are your best friends right there.
There are a lot of tigers.
You just met, you gave him a compliment on his truck, and you guys are now best friends.
That would actually be the case.
You guys are moving bunk beds, creating space for activities, the whole deal.
Dang, I guess we don't need to talk a whole lot about tigers. We're all tigers. They're often disorganized with their time and their space. And pitfalls, they can be wishy-washy, and they can have negative feelings and emotions that they suppress. So again, you got to do some digging. Besides active listening, you need to show some enthusiasm to get a tiger to resonate with you. If you got a tiger on the door and you're coming across as a dead weight, what do you call it, Debbie Downer, then you're not going to lack.
Losing interest by the second.
Yes. So you got to jump up and run at the pace of the tiger. And that's fun to do as a coordinator.
I think tigers are probably the best sets, because tigers, they love talking about themselves, right? You start talking about their house and how great it looks. You're like, man, I still buy your house. This looks awesome. I just noticed you have the original ones. And it's like, holy shit. He's talking about my house, and I take a lot of pride, right? And they look back and like, you're right. Yeah, they look pretty bad. But you hit them back with like, you have a nice truck, nice house. I'm sure you've been thinking about this, and just have them talk about themselves, and it's going to give you so much information. Tiger is one like I think you put it really good. You run with a tiger. Literally, they're going to be talking most of the time, right?
Yes.
You just ask the question and give you all the info you need, right? You set it up, and then it's all on them. It's probably one of the easiest personalities to sell. I would say it's a tiger.
I think with a tiger, while they're running, you're just kind of tapping them
you're putting
on the sides to get them right back on track. Because the danger with a tiger is if you let him run too far off in the wrong vector, it's going to be a hard thing to bring him back.
You got to get them reeled back in.
Don't let that tiger get too far out in the weeds. Well, cool. So great kind of breakdown of each character type. Now, if we're getting back into, say, bulls, for example, what's the best way to approach a bull? I know for me, like I'm kind of naturally a little bit bullish, probably bull leading with the bull, but then probably more so tiger once I get relaxed a little bit. But with the bull, I know like, hey, they want the information. They want it quickly. They don't want you to beat around the bush. And a lot of times I actually prefer dealing with the bull because again, that's kind of like how I naturally am. And it's just a really quick conversation. I like to get to the point. They like me getting to the point. And now we're moving and grooving. But a lot of people, they can be a little bit afraid of the bull, you know? And sometimes the bull just wants you to step up a little bit. Like he's trying to test you to see how far if he can just push you right over. If you're a pushover, he's going to push you right over. But if you stand your ground a little bit, he's like, okay, you know, maybe I'll listen to what he's got to say. And guys, something that came to mind as we were talking earlier, it's kind of a follow-up of our rapport building podcast. It's just like the next level to it because if level two, because
understanding character traits.
Exactly. If you can understand better the person that you're attempting to build rapport with, that rapport building is going to happen a lot quicker. You're going to be a lot more efficient because you're not wasting time, you know, trying to do a bunch of compliments on a bull. That's like, hey, dude, get to the point.
Yeah, you don't really flatter a bull.
You know, another thing too is even the most savvy coordinator, when presented with a bull and this big personality and kind of intimidating, start stumbling all over yourself. I remember more times than I can count having a big personality and somebody who, if I just was able to keep my stuff together for 45 seconds and be able to start building some rapport with this person, I know that I can get them softened up. But all of a sudden I forgot everything that I needed to say. I'm just, you know, I'm here and I was just so you got to be right there, present in the moment, recognize this is about to be a challenge. You got a bull in front of you. You got to get your stuff together and you got to present it as clean as you ever have to get a chance at building some rapport because most of the time he's going to turn from a bull and want to intimidate you and test your skills to all of a sudden he's your best friend.
Yeah. So here's what I've noticed about bulls. I noticed that a lot of people will start out bullish. Mm-hmm. And if somebody is acting a bull to test you, it's kind of an indicator they're not really a true bull. Because a true bull really just needs the numbers right now. They're not going to, if they really value time, they're not going to waste time pushing you around to see if you'll move. They really want the information. And so a true bull really appreciates a helpsmith. Like I walked into KSET something, a guy's flipping houses and needed a rush job. I didn't even have time to do, in 15 minutes, I had about 10, 15 minutes to give him all the information he needed. He wasn't pushing me around to see what my credentials were. He needed the information. He was a true bull. As opposed to somebody who's like, oh, let's see what this white kid knows, what this brown kid knows, right? And they come and they want to push you around and see if you can stand up after they've hit you with a few questions. That's someone who's acting bullish. They're burning their time and energy to see if that's really an owl who's acting bullish. He wants to see if you can actually give him information, right? And he's more information driven. Right. So it's really interesting. That's an indicator that I've noticed that sometimes somebody's not necessarily a true bull. And the reason why I was able to find that is because of smart Kyle, slowing down. If you slow down and they tune in with you, then you probably had someone who's just testing you by acting bullish. And you can be aware there's probably something underneath there. But if you slow down and you start to lose them because you look around, this guy's a fast mover, and then you probably have a real bull, and it's time to do something about it.
Yeah, you got to be ultra aware and present of those types of scenarios to be able to maximize on it.
Naturally, in the door-to-door industry, you talk to someone, they're gonna give you a bullish front,
Always.
right? They're not always gonna come out smiling and hey, how you doing, right? Like, hey, what do you want? And as like a coordinator, the advice I give them is you always match the energy and then just a little bit more. Right? If someone's being super direct, you can be direct right back, and you can be blunt. And the good thing about bulls is like they're so direct back. It's a lot easier to work with it because you don't have to go around and do all this and that.
No.
It's like, look, man, like, I noticed your windows are not pretty good. That's why I stopped by.
Yeah.
Right? Make sure you get them all the information, and then always make sure you get back to the script. Whether they're a bull, an owl, a lamb, a tiger, we got to make sure whatever we're doing, this is going to be a portion of it, and then get back to the script.
Yep.
Right? Because with all this training, I want to make sure all coordinators know, like, it doesn't mean go away from the script and say, hey, my name's Andres. We're doing 50% off Windows right now. You have to let me know, when it's stopped by the appointment. That'd be an awful thing to say. So you just talk to them right about the intro. You're pretty direct with the bull. You make him bring his guard down, and then you go back into the script, and then you let him know what we're doing. And if it's a good fit or not, you set the appointment.
So really what we're doing is we're addressing bullish behavior.
Yeah.
When we see a bull and they're going to act bullish, you're going to punch him in the nose and go, are you really a bull, or are you acting like a bull? Right? You know what I mean?
You got to control the conversation.
Yeah, you're matching their energy, and then after that period, you kind of get into it and figure out what really is important to them.
And something that I do with bulls, and the context of a coordinator would be, someone saying that they just don't have a lot of time. You could just be like, hey, I understand you don't have a lot of time. Let me just give you the short version. And then you just give it to them normal. Like when you say, let me just give you the short version, they feel like they won, but then you just give it to them normal anyway. And it opens them up for the delivery of whatever it is the next step is. So that's something that's worked a lot with really well for me with bulls, and just extending time frames a little bit to get a little bit more information to them.
This is a great synergy, because I talk about an idea, and we just got 2 examples, really good examples about how to apply it. You guys, those are great applications.
There we go. Yep. So let's come up with a couple of examples for our owls and lambs and tigers too, so we can keep moving this thing along.
So if you've got a tiger at the door, if you roll it with an icebreaker, you got to be careful, because that icebreaker may just take on a life of its own. You might take 30 minutes to talk to somebody about the 57 Chevy they're restoring in their garage.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is sometimes that 30 minutes is what you have to go through to get to the set. And sometimes it works out that way. I saw that on the Pronto tie up north, just talked about how he talked with a guy for 30 minutes and then he came back to the set.
You got the set. We got ourselves a tiger. But you definitely want to be careful, because we're out there with some intention about our time. We're protective of the time that we have out here each day to be able to go out and operate at a high level and be able to produce results. And if you're talking to everybody for 30 minutes, even the renters, you're not maximizing on your time. And most of the time, the renters are the most likely to carry on a 30-minute conversation. So get to the point. You're there to do a job. If you are in front of a tiger and they're a homeowner and they got a 57 Chevy that they like talking about, or a yard that's perfectly manicured, I've done that, and it led to sales. But if you do too much of that, you end up with very small contact ratio, very few results. So you just got to manage your time well.
Dude, you hit that on the head. So what you have to do is you have to pre-qualify quickly.
Yeah.
Because if for instance, you just spent your 30 minutes listening to a guy, and then 30 minutes later, then you find out he's a renter, you have just, you've lost 30. You could have think of how many doors you could have hit in 30 minutes.
Exactly.
That was your paycheck, right?
Yeah. I mean, we love people. We love talking to people, but there's a time and a place for that. Right now, when we're out here and we only got 3 hours left in the day of my golden hour, I'm not wasting any time with any renters. I'm saying, great to meet you. Do you have a relationship with the homeowner at all? Great. It's just a property management company. This may not be the best fit then. Appreciate your time. Pew, I'm out of there.
And there's going to be word tracks for those specific tigers, right? Because I think we all got them as door knockers. They won't stop talking. You're like, how do I get out of here? This guy won't shut up. I'm trying to leave. So what I've been using, I'm like, hey man, they time me, right? Now my boss gonna call me if he sees I'm not knocking the door.
That's what Caleb.
He said, oh yeah, I don't want to get you in trouble or anything, and then they let you go.
Yeah.
Like sometimes, and you want to be nice to that door,
Yeah.
but realistically, it shouldn't take you more than 10 minutes to set any appointment, even if it's a tiger, right? You can build up enough rapport, and just like we're saying with tiger, you got to reel him back in every time. Right? Talk a little bit about the color in their house and everything. Anyways, yeah, this is what we're doing, right? You go back into Windows. That's a little bit more advanced, right? Like, I mean, we're not talking about level 1, but as you knock doors and you get farther into JKR, you're going to realize, like, there's a lot of ways you can do it, and they won't get mad or anything. They know you're working, right? They can respect that. He's like, hey, man,
Absolutely.
I got to go. You know what I mean? I think you guys can benefit from this. And you set the appointment.
And the funny thing is like, I remember when Obi would lay down, they track my doors. Like our coordinators are low jacked. The funny thing is we are low jacked now. We got Zero and we got Sales Rabbit, and Caleb just rolls it like, you know what?
We're low key tracking everything that you do.
So it's real.
So there is some truth to that, but you got to be bold. You ever heard that saying? Timid salespeople have skinny kids.
Yep.
You got to be bold in this business, man. You got to be protective of your time. And if you got a tiger that's going to ramble on, you got to get him back on track. And, you got to appease him a little bit and be curious about his stories and things that he's curious about. Then lead him right back onto the path, back to where you're intended to be, so you can get on with the rest of your day.
And you can utilize that personality type and the way they like to give information. You can utilize that depending on the neighborhood. So maybe you knocked into a tiger that's a renter. Well, get them talking about the neighborhood. Get the scoop. Get the 401. Understand what's going on. And obviously, he owns the house. You want to capitalize and get the appointment. But also, you can utilize that. Get them talking about the neighbors and just start getting a feel for the neighborhood. And now you're knocking a bunch of warm doors instead of cold doors. So there's a way to utilize it. But at the end of the day, that's something I've seen a lot of people. Joel, I've seen you do it yourself. You get caught up with the tiger. Hour later, it's like, hey, man, we had like 5 opportunities to leave and you just kept on. You didn't take those opportunities.
It's because
not Joel.
And I have to reel myself in. So the fact of the matter is, we very seldom do you encounter somebody who's a pure tiger, and you're gonna, that it's actually going to be a viable prospect. Very seldom do you actually want to sit there and listen for 30 minutes in order to get to the set. And really, it's only going to be a coordinator that's really good at reading people that's going to understand that. But you guys are right. There are viable opportunities with tigers. Mike and I knocked one door. She's got Windows already. She gave us the name, phone number, and address of 3 referrals. We came back, gave her flowers to say thanks for that. She gave us one more. It was a brother. She invited him into his house. He was sold before he left her house. I went over to his house directly from her house and sold him the whole house. Tigers will do that. She's that gal that talked with everybody in the neighborhood. We'll get another one from her. It'll be one of her neighbors that never opens. She never opens the door for door-to-door people, but she's got a green thumb. We dropped the flowers off at her house, and we were working through the referral to get her. Tigers can be viable. I did that in Boise. Absolutely. Too. I found somebody who pointed me in the direction of the Corey Barton builder that built homes that just after about 5 years, everything breaks.
Yeah, there's nothing like having a warm contact, and referrals that's why referrals are so powerful, because you have a known, trusted individual in that community that's referring their neighbors and their family to you. It doesn't always work, but it sure is a lot different than going and cold knocking on their door, because now they've had a good experience with us and we've got some instant credibility and already a layer of trust built in to go and start this engagement with. And the results compared to cold contact are significant. Especially with the lamb, which I think is a perfect segue to get into how to approach a lamb. I know we spent a little bit more time on that than the other ones, so we'll get through that briefly, and then we'll talk about the owl.
I think what Andre said was really important. I said a lamb needs a flock, but more than a flock, a lamb really needs a shepherd. And so what you do is you want to, and I think you already hit on that really well about how you're going to use credibility and assurances to earn your trust of that lamb. And then once you've achieved more and more trust with that lamb, you're going to ask some of the more difficult questions that a lamb doesn't usually answer and get them to open up a little bit more to find out who is it that would really be making the decision, right? Who is it that I really need to have at this appointment? What are the biggest concerns that I need to address? What are the dominant buying motives? The things that are going to let me know, is this going to be a qualified appointment or are you going to ghost me?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The lambs, now that I think back, getting more familiar with these character traits, I can think of specific customers that I missed opportunities with because I didn't know this type of stuff. So the more familiar you can make yourself with these character traits and how to navigate their personalities and the way that they operate their lives and their business, the better chances you have, the more solid your appointments are going to be, and the better reputation that you get with your director for understanding that if you got a bull, you got to set it up different than a lamb. If you got a lamb, you got to ask extra questions and qualify and make sure that you got people there that you're not going to have to do with these other people. And then, you got to be protective with your time. And there's all these different elements depending on these character traits it's a little bit past the beginner level, but the more you can start to understand it, surround yourself with people that understand it and get the reps in and be present and change your awareness when it comes to being around customers, the more effective you become as a salesperson, the more you move towards being considered a professional instead of just somebody that shows up and goes through the motions.
You're right. In order to simulate a learning environment where you can approach that level 2 kind of learning, what you really need to do is you got to tap into the directors, because directors, they've all, at this point, at least in the South, all of our directors have been through the door knocking experience. And so we're used to seeing lambs, bulls, and we've seen them all, the animals on the door. But then that learning has been added to by encountering those personalities in the close. And it gives us a firmer concept of how people behave from these 4 different subsets.
Yes. And that is why it is so important for our directors to be giving feedback. So after the appointments, it's like, I don't know if you noticed, but this person may have seemed like a bull. I listened to your recording. It may have seemed like a bull, but they ended up being an owl. And here are some suggestions next time you run into somebody like this. Here's some indicators. There's some things to look for. And here's how that appointment, it was a great appointment. Appreciate you setting it up. But here are some things that you could have done better to solidify that appointment, to qualify it, to find out some of those buying motives ahead of time. So I had some artillery going into that appointment that I had to just create out of thin air. And it ended up being a little bit more difficult than it had to be. So the more of those types of interactions that we have from our directors to our coordinators, the more that we're raising their awareness. And if it's the right person as a coordinator, they're hungry for that information. They want that. It's like, you know what? I completely missed that, but I thank you so much for bringing that to my awareness. So next time I can be a little bit better. And I can make that appointment just a little bit better, because there is nothing more that I want than to have a reputation for setting solid appointments for my directors.
That's solid, Jeff. And I think the best way to transfer the knowledge and awareness of those 4 different personality sets is to role play with a director, because those directors can switch that personality. And then after the role play, come back and go, hey, could you tell when I was, which animal was I? Which animal was I? And they can simulate, because look, in our coordinator base, not all of our coordinators are homeowners. Not all of our coordinators have had the benefit of being with a bull for longer than 5 minutes to watch them change into something else and go, oh, it wasn't really a bull. But directors have that experience, and not only have they had it, but they can emulate it in role plays, and they can come out and go, okay, I'm going to be a specific animal, and then you see if you can guess what it is. So the directorship really holds the key to passing on this this piece of information,
is.
this level of awareness.
And how important would you guys say that it is for the coordinator to initiate those? Because it's not, you've really got to take responsibility for it. We're going to help, and we love helping, but the coordinators that initiate it, that take ownership, that are curious, and they're calling as soon as that thing turns a different color, they're calling and asking some questions. Those are the guys that mysteriously are also doing the best.
I know. They're the ones that won't leave the directors alone. They're like, "Can I run an appointment with you? How did that go? Hey, they're sending me zeros. The guys that send me zeros all the time, you know, those are the hunger for knowledge. Those are the guys that are just gonna grab a hold of whatever element of training that they need and level themselves up by leveraging the knowledge base that is available through our directorship."
Yeah, I think it's just the biggest difference between being a professional and just being an amateur, right?
Yes.
You look at the people that are starting out, they're taking this job seriously, they're reaching out. There's a lot of knowledge in our team, South and North, right? You can reach out to anybody in the team on any given point, and they're gonna get back to you, right? So you're reaching out, you know, you're sending texts, you're calling, like the people that are doing that, like you said, somehow they're always on top, and there's a reason why, right? It's all correlated to the same. Right, these guys are grinding. They're doing fantastic, and the people that aren't, the people that you know they see an orange appointment and they put their head down and they don't want to talk about it, are the people that aren't doing that well. And I mean, it's so simple, really, what you need to do, right? And these things right here that we're doing, like slam, elbow, super simple as well. You should be able to, every time you knock a door, once you're done with that door, you should be able to recognize, okay, that was a bull, that was an owl, tiger. It started as a bull, then it switched to a tiger. But they should be simple to everybody in the team.
Yeah, you got to get the reps in, get your awareness up about these character traits. So each one of your interactions, you can start paying attention. And it's interesting how quickly you can start to adapt some of these skills when you just change your awareness a little bit. And you walk away from a door, and instead of just, you know, looking at Instagram or you just on to the next thing and do, you're intentional with your time. And you're going back over and you're doing your reflection. And that's one of the things that separates average and ordinary from professionals also, is they're constantly challenging. They're always reflecting. They're always trying to gather more information. How could I have done this better? And always challenging the things that they're doing right now. So if you don't have that kind of mindset, it's okay. We all come from different places. But this is why we put these things together, so you can start to change your awareness and your perspective about what's possible for you. And if you truly are intentional about raising your lid, I guess, and raising and increasing your lifestyle, you got to be intentional about it, and you got to act like a professional. And professionals don't just show up on the weekends and play. They are constantly putting in work to be able to earn their right to be on those teams, to be considered professionals.
Yeah, what we're finding is how much JKR reinforces, infuses the level up lifestyle. And once you've had a taste of JKR, it's really hard. You got to go up. You know, It's like Cardone talks about advance or retreat. But once you've had a taste of advance, the retreat tastes terrible. It's not enough.
Yep. Well, that's what separates people, is once they get a taste of it, if it's too much, they will retreat. But the people that get a taste of it and they start to tap into what their potential is, and they start to believe that there's different things possible for themselves, then they can find an environment like this and be hungry to be able to just tap into it. It's like, this is a place where I can thrive, where I can really start tapping into my potential and have a place and be surrounded by people that are all doing something similar. And everybody wants to help you get to that place. All right, gentlemen, that was phenomenal. Let's go ahead and wrap it up here. Thank you for contributing and jumping on. I know you guys got a busy schedule out there. And I'm going to watch for those couple of same days to turn green today, old boy.
Let's go.
Let's keep that momentum going. Until next time, we out of here. Thanks, guys.